Well, good evening, everyone. I welcome you to this regular board meeting of February 23rd, 2022, and I call this meeting to order. I would ask you to stand, or whatever you are doing, to join with me in the singing of our national anthem. The only special mention I have today is that it is Pink Shirt Day, and I will be saying more about this later, and I'm sure others will too. And we have a timed item at 6:40, so let's get rolling. I have a motion moved by Trustee Cram, or Vice Chair Cram, seconded by Trustee Danaher, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve consent agenda items 502 to 503, February 23rd, 2022, as submitted. Please cast your ballots online.
Chair, did you do roll call first to see if we have quorum?
No, I did not. Director, would you take roll call, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is your roll call for February 23rd, 2022, public session. Trustee Barry. Trustee Barry.
Trustee Barry has indicated that he is having an internet problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vice Chair Cram.
Present.
Trustee Danaher.
Present.
Trustee Jacobs.
Present.
Trustee McPherson. Trustee McPherson. Chair McAllister.
Present.
Trustee McCray.
Present.
Trustee McDonald. Trustee McDonald. Trustee Parisian.
Present.
Trustee Schooler. Trustee Schooler. Trustee Swan. Trustee Swan. Student Trustee Ali.
Present.
Student Trustee Ward.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you, Director. So I will return my apologies to item 501. It's moved by Trustee Cram, seconded by Trustee Danaher, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve consent agenda items 502 to 503, February 23, 2022, as submitted. Please cast your ballots online. I'm in favor, Lisa.
Thank you, Chair McAllister.
I'm in favor, Lisa. Sorry, I wasn't fully connected into the meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Parisian. Mr. Chair, that motion carries.
Thank you. We will now move to item 601. Are there any conflict of interest declarations? Hearing none, we will move to comments from our Director of Education, Mr. Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure to share with trustees tonight that as we continue to have opening up of some of the restrictions that our communities of schools, as of March 2nd, will be able to follow the provincial guidelines and the easing on March 1st, and that will allow us to have even more people make use of our facilities in our communities, including getting back to having people of all ages be able to use those facilities and to have spectators and others join them. So certainly a step in the right direction. And as always, we're following the direction of the province and our chief medical officers of health. And they have given the green light throughout the province to gradually ease restrictions. And part of that does impact our abilities to allow people who want to use our facilities through the community use of schools protocol to be able to do so in a way that's more close to the way it was before the pandemic began. So certainly happy to be able to share that, and I know many trustees have been advocating for us to be able to do that when we were able to and get things in our community back to more normal so that people can use those facilities for their physical and mental well-being. And so very happy to share that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director. I have a few remarks. I think Director Ron has referred to this as my fireside chat. I'm not sure that it deserves that kind of elevation, but here are a few comments that I have to make. Number one, in a recent teleconference with the chairs of boards in Ontario, the Minister of Education, Stephen Lecce, has announced a number of important steps in the areas of student mental health and learning recovery, namely a significant increase in the grants for student needs, the return of extracurricular activities, strategic student mental health and wellness, tutoring supports, and summer learning. Our challenge is to understand these initiatives, use them, and adapt them to the particular needs of our students. And I am confident that our skilled staff will transform this funding into actions within the framework of our strategic plan. I have to say that this is tremendously good news for our board, and our staff is still drafting how and where and when it will get rolled out. The fact that the grants for student needs were announced in February as opposed to usually April, sometimes May, has been very significant for us and has enabled us to plan much, much better than ever before. We are very pleased with these announcements, and we will be cooperating 100% with the government to enact and enable these initiatives. So that's my first comment. My second one, sadly, I have two items of bad news. I must report to you the accidental death of one of our Pineview Public School students in a recent tragic fire. I extend our prayers and support for this student's parents and family. Secondly, unfortunately, again, the BCI community and the Brockville community has lost an important teacher in the person of Mary Ryan, who passed away this past weekend. I knew Mary in our work with one of our church choirs here in Brockville, and I know she will be sadly missed by her colleagues, her students, and the Upper Canada Board in particular. Finally, on a positive note, the staff at Linklater Public School has been distributing t-shirts these past 2 weeks with the message inscribed, "In a world where you can be anything, be kind." I know similar inspirational work is being conducted in all of our schools in the Upper Canada District School Board, especially today, which is Pink Shirt Day, a day to raise awareness about bullying. Bullying is never okay. If you or a friend are being bullied, either at school or in your office or in your workplace or wherever you are, and you're not sure what to do, reach out to someone who can help you. And if you're a student, reach out to your favorite teacher, EA, custodian, office administrator, or report it to the office. I date myself, I know, but I remember the lyrics of this Glenn Campbell song. You got to try a little kindness. Yes, show a little kindness. Just shine your light for everyone to see. So with that, we are going to move on to 901, which is the delegations and special recognition, and I'm very pleased. I'm sorry. Are we doing the Stewart School now, or are we adding with the operations update? Director?
Mr. Chair, since we have both of the doctors have now joined us, I recommend that we go ahead to their portion. They're both incredibly busy and both online now. So if we can skip down to item 10.01, I think that would be helpful for them as well.
Thank you very much. And that's a great segue for you, Director, to introduce this segment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, very pleased to have both Dr. Paul Remoliotis, Medical Officer of Health for Eastern Ontario Health Unit, and Dr. Paula Stewart, who is the Medical Officer of Health for the Leeds, Grenville, Lanark District Health Unit. They've become very regular guests of ours, and we're very happy to have them. Since this pandemic has begun, they've worked alongside us and with us in complete collaboration to do everything we can to keep our students and our staff safe. They've been doing heroic work for us. They have been, and their team, under very difficult and challenging circumstances, with not a lot of positive feedback oftentimes, which is unfortunate, but that's the nature of what we find ourselves. But I certainly can say to this Board of Trustees that they've been nothing but cooperative and incredibly professional, and we all, not only in the Upper Canada School Board, but in our communities, owe them a debt of gratitude for what they've done under this emergency situation. And I'm also very happy to say that as a Board of Trustees and as a school board, we have followed all of their recommendations and left it up to the professionals, the medical health professionals that they both are, and taken their guidance and advice. And I certainly encourage anyone watching this to do the same. A lot of people have a lot of opinions during this pandemic, but the fact of the matter is that experts still matter, and we're very fortunate to have these two experts here with us tonight to share an update and provide more guidance for us. So at this point, I'll turn things over to Dr. Paul.
So it's Paula. I'll start, and then Paul will join in. So tonight we're going to really give you a quick snapshot about sort of what's happening with COVID in our communities. And then we're going to I'll talk a little bit about our reframing of our approach, which fits very well with the comments that the chair and the director made, actually. And then Paul is going to do the report on Matthews. He's a pediatrician and probably is the one best qualified to do that. And then we'd be happy to answer any questions. So can I have the first slide, please? So what's happening with COVID? So we've lost our ability to give you a really, really good picture about what's happening in COVID in our communities, because most people who have COVID symptoms aren't able to be tested at the assessment centers, and that lab report then comes to us. But this is a little bit of data. I'm calling the people who can be tested. There are sentinels. They're giving us a sense about what's happening in the community without us knowing what's happening for everyone. And you can see from mid-January, we were still kind of high coming off Christmas and New Year's, but we're now settling down. There is still COVID in the community, so let's not pretend that it's gone away. The good thing is that people following precautions means there's not as much. There still is COVID in the community, and there's lots we can do about that. So Paul, I'll let you talk about the next one.
Thank you. So we're looking at basically the positivity ranges, and as Paula said, you know, this is a time where we're trying to we've changed the way we're looking at our indicators, and we've also changed the way that we're going to be responding to COVID. We're now in a transition period into which we will live alongside COVID, and that's called sort of scientifically endemic, where we take it for granted that COVID is around as long as it doesn't overwhelm our healthcare system and as long as our vulnerable populations are protected optimally. And we do now have tools in place that we didn't have tools last year to be able to achieve that. So this is the percent positivity. We're looking at percent positivity, and as you know, we had a very big spike of Omicron that peaked around the 3rd to 4th week of January, and then we had a rapid sort of diminution of the cases and hospitalizations. And one of the measures that we're using aside, because now we're not testing everybody, as you know. So what we're looking for is sort of what I call proxy indicators of transmission in our community. And so you can see that in the end of January, our positivity, in other words, the percent of people that tested who were positive was over 30%. And in fact, in some areas in our health unit, there were 41%. So very high positivity, which means you had a very large number of people who were testing positive. And for every person we tested, probably 3 or 4 were not tested that had it. So we had a lot of cases surging, but you can see now there's a downward trend on this, and our positivity now is less than 15%. As a matter of fact, it's approaching 10%. Just for reference, we're not. We feel that transmission is controlled when you're below 5%, certainly when you're below 3%. So we're not there yet, but we're on our way down. Next slide, please.
So the next, another indicator we're using is absenteeism, and as I think you all know, there's a provincial website which is tracking absenteeism for all the schools. I look on it every second night just to see how our schools are doing. And in Lanark, Leeds, and Grenville, so far we have not. The schools have to report to us if they have more than 30% absenteeism above what their usual is. And so we've had a few notifications, but in following up with the schools, there was a really very specific reason for the increased absenteeism, like the last day of quadmaster or bus cancellations. So we really haven't seen a serious problem with absenteeism in Lanark, Leeds, and Grenville. And over to you, Paul.
Yes, and then in this slide, you can see that with us as well, we have not seen a lot of absenteeism in our area. We had I think 2 or 3 absenteeisms recently, and 2 were because of school bus cancellation and weather issues. And so and we're seeing this across the province as well, where I think at last report, there was 99.71% of all schools were open in Ontario. Next slide.
Yeah. So so I'm going to build on Paul's introduction to the concept of living well with COVID. Could I have the next slide, please?
It's up. Living alongside.
Oh, okay. I just can't see it. That's
yeah,
okay.
It's up, Paula.
Okay, good. All right. There's little. So this concept of living well alongside COVID has been talked about by Teresa Tam, by Karen Moore. And as Paul said, it's the idea that the COVID virus is around, and it probably isn't going to ever disappear. It's going to be around us just like the coronavirus, which is its sort of parent organism, or RSV, or influenza. And so what can we be doing collectively to get on with our lives, be able to do the things that we want to do, respecting the virus, and looking at what we can do both as communities and organizations, and also with individuals and families. And it's really I can see it, it's a much more sustainable approach to living with COVID. 2 years ago, it was a brand new organism. We didn't know very much about it. We didn't know what we could do to prevent it. We're in a very different situation now, 2 years from that. And I think the big community focus is preventing severe cases, protecting the vulnerable people with chronic health conditions who would really struggle coping with the COVID virus, and ensuring that the healthcare system capacity is there for people who do have serious COVID, and also for all of the other kinds of things that the healthcare system needs to do. And for organizations and businesses, and that includes the boards of education, it's really looking at it from an occupational health and safety perspective, preserving your capacity to be able to provide your services, which means that what can you do so that you that if someone has COVID in the workplace, a teacher or another staff member, how can you ensure that it's not going to be spread to others? And so those are things like masking, screening, people staying home when sick, reducing the times that people get together and meet. And I know we've had a lot of questions about meetings and when they could be resumed. And it's really doing a risk-benefit assessment. Are you able to do the meetings through Zoom or through Teams so that you can still have a really, really good meeting without bringing people together? And I think that's the stage that we're in right now, thinking what's the best way to be meeting and doing our business. And then for individuals and family focus, which is the real public health part of this, really encouraging promoting health. And you see people outside walking and having a good time in the snow, really encouraging healthy eating, physical activity, lots of really good sleep, social connections and support, staying home when sick. And we know all of these precautions that we can take, the layers of protection. Staying home when sick, testing if you have access to either the rapid antigen or if you qualify for the PCR. Vaccine, so important. Getting that third dose of vaccine, I'm thrilled that the 12 to 17s can now get it, because the protection against symptoms goes up to about 61%, and the protection against serious infection needing hospitalization is up at 95%. Masking when you're indoors or masking when you're with people who are immune compromised and would really suffer if they develop COVID infection. Social distancing, hand washing, hand sanitizer, regular cleaning, and I've added another one, which is avoiding crowds. So those are all the things that we can do and decide what is important in our lives and then build the layers of protection around that so we can do it well. We're used to doing all those things now. Our kids are doing those. And so that's really, it's the new phase of live well alongside COVID-19. Don't be intimidated by it, respect it, and follow the precautions that you think are needed in a given situation. And I think that fits with what Ron said in terms of when you can open up things more if people are familiar with the kinds of protection that they can put on themselves to protect themselves and others, while making decisions that they can really go out and start doing the things they want to do. And so important for our young people in schools, mention mental health. So critical that they're able to do those activities before that were really essential to their mental health. And over to you, Paul.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the next slide, please. So that brings us to mask wearing. And, you know, there's been a lot of questions. As you know, people are protesting against masking and other mandates. And we've had a lot of questions, and I'm sure you have, about masking in school, masking young children. Paula and I have gotten multiple emails from very concerned parents. I've actually got both sides of the equation. I've got parents begging me to keep masking and others wanting us to remove them, even calling us child abusers because we're putting masks on young children. And so I just wanted to let you know that, mask mandates in the schools have been associated. We know that. There's been a recent study from Public Health Ontario that showed that mask wearing has shown a lower incidence of COVID infection. It's hard to really isolate what is the biggest impact because we're doing it on a multi-layered approach. We also know that children masking in the context of sports indicated a potential to benefit mask wearing while playing indoor and close contact sports, and that's another one. Overall, again, inconclusive, but again, we also know that child adherence to masking is higher in school settings because there's more supervision, and obviously it gets better with age. And I can tell you as a pediatrician, there's a very wide range of developmental ability and motor skill development and coordination in a 4 or 5 or 6 year old. There's a very wide range, and we do know that there are some challenges there, but we also do know that based on studies, initially the studies had shown that 0 to 4 masking is not effective, but last year the CDC and others looked at some studies and said yes, children older than 2 can wear masks safely, and so that's why we had that's why there's a recommendation, and we actually recommended that your JK and K also have masking because we thought, and at the time that we made the recommendation, we had a lot of cases at that point, and so that remains that was remaining as a recommendation, and finally. There's no observed evidence, objective evidence really to suggest any respiratory, cognitive impacts or negative impacts on these in terms of the effect on children. And so we always in public health, and this is what I have responded to parents who have emailed me and asked to remove masking. The point is that in pediatrics and in public health and in medicine overall, our goal is to balance between protecting the child, positive benefits and negative benefits. And we believed, and I still do believe, that the benefits outweigh any risk. Certainly, the masking to me is not a invasive intervention, and so I do believe that they do have a role. And as Paula said, as we get into living alongside it, we will be reevaluating the use of masks in schools and the use of masks, for that matter, in public settings. It's just that we want to be able to do it in a very measured and progressive way. As you know, January 31st, there was reopening of restaurants and gyms, 50% capacity. Last week, the 17th, we then progressed to 100% capacity in those areas. On next week, we're going to progress with removing the vaccine passport. And really, the only thing that's going to be left for masking is going to be, for public health measures, is really masking and washing your hands and not going to work or school when you're sick. So that is going to be the last thing that we're going to be taking away, but we're doing it in a stepwise progression. At this point, because of the numbers are going down and the situation with the ministry now, the new guidelines have recommended optional use in JK and K. Our recommendation is that we would recommend it where a child can take it, but we will not strongly recommend it. We will suggest it at this point because, again, we're in the process of pulling back. I also know that some of you might ask me, well, Quebec is removing masks literally next week. I just want to tell you that they're removing masks in classrooms. I think you should know that. They're moving in classrooms. Children will be wearing, when they go and congregate in corridors and other areas, they will be wearing masks. So it's not a complete removal of the masks. And what we're going to be looking at between now and sort of the middle to the end of March is, okay, what are the measures that we'll be looking at? And I talked about those measures before, the proxy measures, positivity, case admissions, hospitalizations, outbreaks, and so on, wastewater, COVID levels. All these things are going to be looked at collectively, looking at how the restriction removal has impacted those. And there will be a decision by the government and the Chief Medical Officer of Health to withdraw the masking mandates, which I'm requesting that they occur simultaneously with the public or in a progressive way, like Quebec has done. I think it's too early to do it right now, but I do think that at some point between now and March, there will be a decision made, middle of March sometime, to be able to say, okay, when the masks will go. Again, there are studies that have showed the benefits, and I still believe that the benefits outweigh the risks, but looking in the context of how we're trying to open up, it won't be long before recommendations to remove masking or partially remove masking in school settings and the public will be implemented. So, when you talk about student masking, obviously they're required. They're required to be indoors at this point. Again, like I said, right now, kindergarten and JK were strongly encouraged, but not required. So where parents would like a child to wear a mask and or the child is capable, we have nothing. We will not. You shouldn't be stopping them. We encourage them, but we're not requiring them. At this point, students are not required to wear masks outdoors. Elementary students are required to stay within their cohort, however, during recess and outdoor breaks, and distancing should be maintained between cohorts as much as possible. again, all of these things will be reevaluated. The meeting assemblies, all these things are going to be reevaluated as we progress into the next phase, that transitional phase into living alongside COVID, which is going to again look at the layer and sort of the layers of protection that we have in the schools, and which ones should remain, which ones should be removed first, and those are things that are in the process of being done now. I must underscore that we have never done this before. Our generation has never, we have never had this type of situation where we had to go into a pandemic, multiple waves, and at the stage where now we've got such a high population vaccination rate combined with the antivirals that will protect the vulnerable and it will protect our hospitals. And now we're in a position to sort of start drawing back. So, other countries and other territories and other provinces have decided to do it one shot. I believe that the approach that Ontario has done is a slow and sensible and a progressive one. And I do believe that, as I've said in December, in a press conference on December 31st, I said, it'll be better on the other side of the Omicron curve, and we'll be able to, at that point, breathe a bit easier. We're not out of the woods yet, but I think we'll have all the tools necessary to be able to start a path to normalcy. It won't be fully normal. We'll still be living with the threat of COVID, but as long as we can tolerate the ups and downs of COVID and don't have high admission rates, don't have severe disease in the vulnerable, we'll be able to live through it as the pandemic itself will fizzle itself out. But certainly for the rest of the year, we will have that pandemic cloud around us globally. Okay, so in terms of, I take this one, Paula?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay, so again, physical ed, again, February now, high and low contact activities are permitted outdoors without masking. Masking is required for indoor sports when not actively engaged in the activity. Masks can be removed when actively participating in the activity if they're not to be worn safely while participating. So for example, if it impairs breathing or they're doing very vigorous exercise. And again, all of these things are in the process of being reevaluated. And that's what I meant. There might be some situations, high risk situations where you might need a mask, others you won't, and others you won't in the classroom setting and so on. So those are the things that are going to be reevaluated as we move forward. Next slide, please. Oh, music and masking. So again, for singing, for elementary, masking is required within a cohort with as much distancing as possible and encouraged between individuals. For secondary school, masking is required and as much distance as possible. And wind instruments as well, required. We're not actively engaged. You can't blow a trumpet or a horn with a mask on. We need them, and we have some distancing and so on. And again, these are examples of a higher risk activity. When I say high risk, it means, a child or a person singing or a child blowing into a wind instrument is expelling, respiratory particles. And if it's COVID, it's expelling them far away. And that's why these are higher risk activities. And perhaps, we might look at a scenario, and again, I'm just theorizing that we might look at situations where, okay, you don't need masking in this situation, but you need it in this situation, and then progressively remove everything. So this will depend on the data. This will depend on where we are and what the government decides. But that's the approach that we'll be taking. We'll be looking at protecting the higher risk, preserving some measures there. Like, for example, in the community, very easy for me to say that, yes, we'll probably remove masking for the public in public places, but we'll keep masking in hospitals and in, long-term care facilities, for example. And that's the type of thing, that's the type of thinking that we're going to be doing. Next slide, please. So, this is the information for both our health units. I just want to say that we have had tremendous cooperation with the director and his team as well. I know that I can speak for Paula, and she will as well verify this, that we have been in constant contact. We've responded back and forth. The open dialogue is there, and I think it's very important. And as the chair said before, we are now going to be challenged. I actually printed out the document from the ministry, and I was reading it in terms of learning recovery, all of the summer learning programs, all of the transfer, the allocations, Indigenous education, the math, the mental health and well-being, all these things, are challenges that we have, are residual effects of the pandemic, and we will be there in our capacity as public health, with our public health nurses, to be able to support you and your children and your students to go through the next recovery phase. Paula, I don't know if you want to add something?
No, I think that's good. Thank you.
Dr. Paul and Dr. Paula, thank you very much for this presentation. Do you have time to take a few questions from trustees?
Yes.
Trustees,
Yes,
I open the
sure.
floor to questions.
I have one, Chair.
Go ahead, Vice Chair.
Dr. Paul and Paula, because of the amount of time necessary for planning, and I'm trying not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. 4 months from now is graduation time. Should we be starting to plan now for an in-school graduation? Regardless of, well, not quite that, not regardless of what's going on, but in order to do that successful planning, should we be looking at it and maybe put it on hold till you give a more accurate assessment in a month? But if we don't start planning soon, we wouldn't have enough time to actually do it. And I think our students have missed that contact with graduations for long enough now.
Yeah. So
Paula,
I'll start maybe, and then I'll start.
Go ahead.
So I think the way we're thinking now is that if there's something really important to do, then start planning for it and start to have options in terms of what the situation will be like then. But I think that's really what we are working toward, is that the things that are really important to us, do a risk-benefit analysis, and if this is a really important thing, then I would start planning, and I would have options about if the numbers are really high, what could we do, what could we add more protection, what could we reduce if we needed to. But I think that's exactly the mindset. That's the living well with COVID-19. So I think that that's exactly the kind of thing that it's important to, not to put all your eggs in that basket, but to start to think about what things really are important for the students and look at options about how it could be done depending on what the situation is. Thank you for bringing that up. I think that's exactly how, that has to be how our mindset changes. Before it was all shut down, shut down, shut down. Now it has to be what's important to us and how could we figure out how to do it well.
I fully agree. We're just so you'll know, we're now receiving dozens of event applications for the summer, July 1st and all these things. And as far as we're concerned, they should be planning them. I think that, with the new openings, there's no restrictions anymore. The only question will be at that point, will people be required to wear a mask in an indoor event? It's an indoor event. And other than that, there won't be any restrictions, pending any catastrophic change. But at this point, we're headed towards that direction. As a matter of fact, on March 1st, you'll be able to go to the CTC with 18,000 people, wearing masks and so on, of course. But again, I don't see any reason not to plan for it. As a matter of fact, I would encourage it. I think it would be another psychological blow that people don't need if you don't have it live. Again, pending any catastrophic or unforeseen change in this pandemic. But moving forward, you should be planning for it. Of course, have a contingency, but if you do it the other way around, you won't have enough time to plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. Dr. Paula. Are there any further questions? Dr. Paul and Dr. Paula, I have a question for you with regard to masking of junior K and kindergarten students. I know you have addressed this. It is optional at this point for boards, but prescriptive for students in grades 1 to 12 at the present time. Could you just maybe go over your rationale on this and where we might be heading?
The rationale really is one of a collective look by the ministry of some of the effectiveness of masks in younger children. We know that the masks are more effective in older children, and we do know that the older children are the ones that have higher positivity, so we want to protect them at this point. We also know that there are some challenges with younger children. I think it was worthwhile doing it when we're high transmission rates, back when we recommended it. But at this point, this is our transition, Chair, into removing masks completely in schools. And so we're starting with that population first, and then we're going to reevaluate, as I said, moving forward. So the rationale really is the context have changed, and the dynamics and the positivity rates are higher among the older children than they are on the younger children, and the adherence to it is easier there. So it's just a matter of trying to do as much as we can when the risk is very high around us, which it was when we started this, and starting to pull back on those in a progressive way. And this is the way the ministry has chosen to sort of pull back.
Thank you. I have a second question with regard to the loosening of restrictions with regard to in-person board meetings of trustees. What would your advice be on this one?
Paul, you want to take that one?
Yeah, we're looking at that with our board as well, and I think every board is looking at that. I know the municipal councils are looking at it as well, and I think it comes down to doing a risk-benefit analysis. Because if you bring people together, then there's a possibility that if someone has COVID, then it could spread. And hopefully, if you do decide that you're going to meet in person, that you're very, very careful about making sure that people who have symptoms stay home. It helps a lot if people are fully vaccinated, that you've got some distancing. So if the board decides that it's really, really important that they do meet together, and that's sort of been my theme throughout the talk today, then figure out how to do it safely. I think that one of the things I said is that it's really important to protect vulnerable people. And because vulnerable people have a really serious problem with COVID. And we've had 1 or 2 deaths each week due to COVID from people who have had serious underlying health conditions, and it's just been hard to cope with the virus. So I think you have to look at who might be involved in the meeting, what the risk is to them, and what is the benefit. And if you decide you're going to go ahead with it, then what are the risk mitigation factors you can put in place? And consider that again, are you able to do them electronically? So it's a decision I think that the board has to take collectively, looking at the risks and the benefits, and with the risk, can you mitigate them?
Thank you very much for that information. Trustees, are there any further questions?
Mr. Chair, John McRae.
Go ahead, Trustee McRae.
Thank you. This is a follow-up to your question. It's about the model they've used in Quebec, where they begin with cohorts. The good doctors think that possibly is where we'll start when we open things up with the cohorts, with taking the masks off.
It's interesting because the cohorting has been a fundamental part of keeping schools open. That you keep groups of kids together so that if there is infection, that it spreads in a small group rather than a larger group. So let's wait and see. I think I think Paul is seeing into the crystal ball a little more clearly than I am. So I'm not going to go out and say much more than that. I think that Paul is right, that I think at the provincial level, they're really looking at all the evidence. And I think it'll be really fascinating to see this sort of the situation that's happening in Quebec. What difference does it make? And then how can it guide what we do here? So I think if you think that trying to reduce the amount of contact that people have within the school, if you are going to go with reducing some of the protections, then you might keep that one of keeping kids together. So let's see. Let's see.
Yeah, I have no more to add. That's how it's going to be. It's hard for us to predict. Again, Quebec did a cohorting. They did it not only cohorting, they actually did it with location. But we will see.
Thank you very much, doctors, Paul and Paula. You know, from the beginning, we have relied on the science and on the expert advice from you two in this board area, and you have served us well, and we thank you very much for the information and the counsel that you have given us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome. It's a fantastic relationship. And when Ron says, "Can I meet with you guys?" Like within 24 hours of meeting. Like I think that there's huge respect on both sides that we are in this together, and it's wonderful.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye. So, trustees,
Bye.
we are still on this topic, and I'm going to move a motion pursuant to the one that we passed on October the 13th, 2021. And at that time, if I don't really have the motion directly in front of me here, but at that time, we prescribed that masking be mandatory for junior K and kindergarten students. At this time, anyway, my motion, I'll present my motion first, and it goes like this. Be it resolved that masking protocols in school classrooms for junior kindergarten and kindergarten students be deemed optional. That is my motion, and I'm looking for a seconder.
Trustee Danaher, second that.
Thank you, Trustee Danaher. So here is given what we have heard from our two medical officers of health, with whom I totally agree. I think it is, we're looking at some progressive steps to get out of this pandemic situation. I think masking is still to be encouraged, but I think a great number of parents are asking that it be made optional, and that is the intent. The intent of my motion, which is to really strike a balance between public health and personal choice. So if you've had my motion, you've had my my rationale, and I would open the floor to any further discussion.
Just a point of order, Mr. Chair. You, as the chair, you shouldn't make move motions and then also direct debate. So perhaps you might want to have someone else move the motion or chair the meeting.
Thank you. I will take that under advisement. And I would ask Trustee Danaher and perhaps one other trustee to.
I'd be happy to move it.
That was Trustee McRae?
Yes, sir.
And a seconder, Trustee Danaher, I assume?
Yes.
Does that satisfy your point of order, Trustee McDonald?
Yeah, we're meeting our requirements under our guidelines.
That's fine. Thank you. I'm happy with that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask you, trustees, to cast your ballot on that motion. And I'll just reread it if I need be, and it's be it resolved that masking protocols in school classrooms for junior kindergarten and kindergarten students be deemed optional. Please cast your ballots. I'm in favor, Lisa. If I
Thank you, Chair.
here.
I am just waiting on Trustee Schooler and Trustee Swan. Okay. Chair McAllister, that motion carries.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, trustees, for your consideration. We are going to go back, I guess, to 901, which is connecting with students, staff, and families. And we are featuring this evening the Stewart School. And I would ask Derek to roll the tape, as they say.
Welcome to the Stewart School, home of the Stewart Stallions, and situated in beautiful historical Perth. Stewart School strives to provide an environment that is safe, caring, respectful, and inclusive. We want our students to feel positive and connected to our school, as they are more likely to try new experiences and take risks with their learning. The physical, social, and emotional wellness of our students is a priority at Stewart. Equity and inclusion are the underlying beliefs that guide our daily work. We offer a comprehensive physical education program and ensure that students participate in physical activity every day for at least 30 minutes. We make it our mission to try to prepare all of our students for a successful life and to become lifelong learners.
Welcome to the Stewart School. I like the school's playground. It's nice. Well, I've been here for many years because I've been here since kindergarten, so I know a lot about the school. The yards are really big. It's very fun in kindergarten and in regular school because you get to do art and math and all the fun stuff.
Well, sometimes it is, but mostly everyone is really, the whole school is a big fun.
My favorite thing about the school is that I get to play with my friends and I like the outside a lot.
I like about the school is how there's always activities to do with my friends, and there's really good teachers, and there's a really big yard.
It's a big school too. Well, there's no second floor, but still pretty big for a school.
I like that it has a lot of nice teachers and that it's helping all of us to learn, and that there's lots of activities.
My favorite thing probably is the teachers because they're really nice and they help you learn. It's a lot more fun than my old school. It's a lot bigger and the play structure is better. Everything about the school is just a lot better.
All my classes have been one of the best teachers because there's always best teachers here, I think.
There's pizza day on every Tuesday. Actually, I think it's on Thursday. Yeah, it's on Thursday. It's awesome because the pizza is the best and that's the best part of school. Yeah.
We're fortunate to be in the town of Perth, but we have a massive schoolyard with a vast property bordered on one side by the Tay River. We've recently purchased snowshoes to fit all of our students from grade 1 through to 6. Today for our session, we have our students outside using snowshoes and doing a storyboard trail.
This school is a nice school and it is bright and colorful. It's very nice. All the teachers and principals are very thoughtful and they always help kids that are in trouble. And I like how we learn. That's all I learned. With all the joy and kindness. I don't have a favorite thing, I like it all. And my favorite thing when I come to school is to see my teachers. My friends, I know some of my friends' names. I know there's Gordy, Liam, and there's Sadie J, Edison, that's not here today. So I have my friend Gordy. He comes over with his visits with me. That's really fun. The school is just so awesome. I love it. How it is.
Thank you very much. And Derek, thank you for the video. Trustee McPherson, would you care to make some comments about one of your schools? Is Trustee McPherson online?
Chair McAllister, I don't believe Trustee McPherson is on the line at this time.
Okay, thank you. I have to admit that the Stewart School is one that I have not visited. I visited many in our board, and I'm hoping that with Trustee McPherson's help and principals and staff's help, we will have that tour. Director, would you care to comment on this at all? You know the area better than anyone.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, well, it's a beautiful school and a great community. Having been the former principal of the high school in Perth, as you state, I know the community quite well, and remarkable community like all of our communities, and Stewart School is certainly a wonderful place to be. You see from those images, it's a nice size school, medium range size school with beautiful facilities, a beautiful yard, as you heard those students say. And certainly it was a pleasure to listen to so many students share how much they enjoy being there. And all of my visits to the school, you certainly come away with the feeling that it is a community school and that the students and staff are happy to be there. And it's one big happy family, as they were stating in that video. So thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Director. We are now going to move to item 1002, which is the enrollment update, number 3, 2021-22, the original projected ADE, average daily attendance, updated. And I will turn this over to you, Director, and to Superintendent Loshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My pleasure to introduce Superintendent Loshaw, who will be bringing this report this evening. Take it away, Superintendent Loshaw.
Thank you, Director Ferguson. Good evening, everyone. And through you, Mr. Chair, it's my pleasure to bring forward enrollment update number 3 to trustees this evening. And as trustees are aware, enrollment is monitored throughout the school year and used to inform operational and budgetary planning, including the allocation of resources for staffing. Next slide, please, Derek. So in terms of background information, the information shared in this report serves as a follow-up to 2 enrollment updates that were shared with trustees in the fall of 21 and includes information that was not available at that time. Trustees will recall that enrollment update number 1 presented high-level observations of enrollment data captured on September 8th in comparison to spring projections. Enrollment update number 2 provided a more detailed analysis of how our geographic areas compare with respect to enrollment growth across the district, and also we focused on where our new UCDSB students attended school previously. Tonight's presentation, enrollment update number 3, will provide trustees with an updated summary of the projected average daily enrollment for the 21-22 school year based on information taken from the October 31st ministry reporting date. And as trustees are aware, average daily enrollment, or ADE, is a measure of student enrollment and is calculated as the average of full-time equivalent enrollments for October 31st and March 31st of each school year, with the FTE, or full-time equivalent, representing the portion of the instructional day that each student is registered. Worth noting is that changes in enrollment always occur between the preliminary enrollment at the start of the school year and the October reporting date. These changes have been verified and are now confirmed for both elementary and secondary, including our adult education program at TR Leger. So this updated information allows us to compare the updated average daily enrollment for the 21-22 school year to spring projections and also to the final ADE from the 2021 school year. So important to note is that the updated figures in this report for elementary, secondary, and TR Leger are actual numbers and no longer projected numbers for the October 31st date. However, given the point that we're at in the school year, ADE figures for the March 31st, 2022 remain as projected numbers and will remain that way until finalized by May of this year. Slide 3, Derek, please. Thank you. So when reviewing the report, trustees would have noticed that attachment A titled 2021-2022 original projected ADE versus updated ADE report lists the original projected ADE by school for both elementary and secondary panels compared to the updated projected ADE based on confirmed enrollments as of October 31st, 2021. And the chart showing on the slide in front of you provides a summary comparison of the 21-22 original projected ADE with the updated 21-22 updated projected ADE, and it highlights the following. So the updated elementary projected ADE is 788 higher than projected in the spring. The updated regular day school secondary projected ADE is 10 higher than the original spring projections. The updated TR Leger projected ADE is 69 higher than projected in the spring, and the updated TR Leger adult day school projected ADE is 4 lower than the original spring projection. However, overall, for all panels, the updated ADE projections for 21-22 indicates a net increase of 863 ADE above projections. So for both elementary and secondary panels, except for TR Leger adult day school, we saw an increase in enrollment compared to projections. However, it's really important to keep in mind that in the spring of 2021, the Ministry of Education directed all school boards to take a very conservative approach to making their projections. Next slide, please, Derek. Also important to note that there are a few key areas, especially in elementary, that account for the largest differences in enrollment. So in the previous school year, we know that many existing UCDSB elementary students, as well as students who are at the entry age for school, remained at home instead of registering for school. The reality is that some families delayed the start of their child's junior kindergarten year or selected homeschooling as an option. And now in the 21-22 school year, those students are now registered in senior kindergarten and taking part in their first year of school. So this delayed start has accounted for more than 200 senior kindergarten students than initially projected. And in addition, many of the students and families who selected homeschooling initially returned to UCDSB schools, and these numbers are reflected in higher than projected enrollment across all elementary grades. And as well as reported in enrollment update number 2, our schools have welcomed students from other Ontario school boards through the migration of families into our district. Slide 5, please, Derek. Thank you very much. When looking at the ADE for the regular day school secondary panel, we see that it is 10 higher than projected, but this number is lower than preliminary observations that were based on the September 8th data. And this may be attributed to approximately 100 students who selected the remote self-study program at TR Leger and were reported in the alternative education enrollment. As well, secondary enrollments counts are often higher on the first day of school than at the October reporting time. And this in part could be a result of having grade 12 students return to school initially and then leave for a variety of reasons, including employment opportunities or post-secondary learning options. Also, as reported to the board in the fall, the enrollment information for regular day school secondary accounts for approximately 100 additional international students who joined the UCDSB than were originally projected. And finally, TR Leger enrollment data that was not available previously is now being provided. And currently the updated projected ADE for TR Leger is 69 higher than previously projected. Slide 6, please, Derek. Thank you. So trustees would also have noticed in attachment A in the report that the report provides the final ADE from the previous school year by school for both elementary and secondary panels compared to the updated projected ADE based on enrollments confirmed on October 31st, 2021. And the chart in front of you on the screen now provides a summary comparison of the final ADE from the 2021 school year to the 21-22 updated projected ADE, and it highlights the following. So the updated projected ADE for elementary is 493 higher than the actual ADE from 2021. The updated projected average daily enrollment for regular day school secondary is 143, higher than the actual ADE from the previous school year. The updated projected ADE for TR Leger is 52 higher than the actual ADE from last year. And the updated projected ADE for TR Leger Adult Day School is 19 lower than the actual ADE from the previous school year. But overall, the difference in updated projections compared to the total average daily enrollment from the 2021 school year is an increase of 668. Slide 7, please, Derek. Thank you. So looking ahead, we know that enrollments will continue to change throughout the remainder of the school year. That's just a fact. It's the way it works. In elementary schools, student numbers typically increase between October and March reporting. There is an indication that this trend is continuing this year and that an additional 80 to 100 students may be reported in the March reporting. And in the secondary panel, there is usually a decrease in the number of students registered between October and March reporting periods. And this is often due to the fact that some grade 12 students meet their graduation requirements in the first semester, or in this case, in the first 2 quadrimesters of this year. And an estimate of this reduction is already accounted for in the updated projections that are provided. So the final average daily enrollment for the current school year will be determined once the October and March components of the average daily enrollment are verified. And as we plan for the 22-23 school year, staff will continue to take a cautious approach when developing projections given the uncertainty of COVID-19, but certainly maintain an optimistic outlook looking forward. And one encouraging sign that we're on track with our enrollment is that we now have close to 900 junior kindergarten registrations, and this is what we would typically see at this point in the registration process. So that concludes enrollment update number 3, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions that trustees may have.
Thank you, Superintendent Lochamp.
You're welcome.
Are there questions, trustees? Superintendent Lochamp, I have one question for you. 863 unexpected students is significant to our board. And notwithstanding the fact that 200 of those students were junior K or kindergarten students who had been withheld for various reasons, primarily the pandemic, and the number of homeschool students, to what do you attribute the difference? Like, why are we getting so many students? I know we have a unique mandate to welcome all students, regardless of sexuality, religion, language, etc. And that is a unique mandate. But do you have an answer for that at all?
Well, first and foremost, and good for you, Chair McAllister, to recognize that this is a good news story, but also to recognize that we were directed to provide conservative projections last year, and that part of the numbers that are reported, the average daily enrollment that is reported this evening, is accounted for with those students, those JK students who were at home last year and are now here, or those students that chose homeschooling last year and have since returned. As well, I mentioned that we do have 100 additional international students beyond what was projected last year. But of course, I would also like to say that we look at very closely at enrollment trends that include transitions at key areas. I mentioned both elementary and secondary and some of the patterns that we see there, but we also look at transitions with respect to when students enter our board. A key transition date is often in grade 7 or grade 9, and I think that that would also attribute to the increased average daily enrollment.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Lochamp. Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, we're going to move to Article 203, which is the report of the student trustees, and I will turn this over to student trustees Ishala Lee and Bradford Ward.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, to the board. Much of our time since the last board meeting has been dedicated to the finalization of this year's student trustee elections and the completion of restructuring the student senate bylaws.
Firstly, on Tuesday, February 8th, I personally visited every grade 10 and 11 class at my home school of BCI to promote this year's student trustee elections, as well as explain what the role encompasses and why one should apply for candidacy. Overall, the presentation was a success, which did garner increased interest from BCI students. Secondly, Trustee Lee and I met with Director Ferguson, Superintendent Jennifer Perry, Vice Chair Cram, and Trustee Parisian to discuss the short list of candidates for this year's student trustee elections. A total of 9 applications were received, however, one candidate did ask for their application to be revoked, leaving a total of 8 applications for further review. The committee discussed each application in great length, and after thorough discussion, the committee found 4 candidates of particular interest who had a very impressive background. The 4 finalists who will be presenting to the Student Senate on the 25th for their candidacy are Eliza Bachelor from North Grenville District High School, Olivia Pereira from North Dundas District High School, Sebastian LaFrance from North Dundas District High School, and Genevieve Rapierre from Gananoque Secondary School. All candidates, successful or otherwise, have been contacted by Trustee Liaison Officer Lisa Workman, and the 4 finalists will present speeches of approximately 3 minutes in length at the next Student Senate meeting on Friday, February 25th. We look forward to the elections with excitement and great promise, and we wish the best of luck to all 4 candidates.
Thirdly, Trustee Ward and I have completed a comprehensive review of the Student Senate bylaws. Upon review of the Student Senate bylaws, we both deemed it necessary for a review as several bylaws were quite outdated. All bylaws have been reviewed over the span of a month. Approximately 9 bylaws have been updated for approval, including Articles 105, Standard Code of Parliamentary Procedure, 2.00, Membership, 3.00, Election of the Student Trustees, 3.25, the Lottery Process, 330, House Leaders, Article 4, Meetings of the Senate, Article 410, Setting the Agenda, Article 420, Absence of Chair, and Article 540, Guest Speakers. The updated bylaws draft has been attached to this report for reviewing. A few changes to the bylaws are around pluralization of student trustee to student trustees to account for 2 student trustees, as well as an inclusion of a vice chair. Student Senate membership has also been updated alongside an updated credo being attached. The amended bylaws will be approved at the Student Senate meeting of the 25th by way of a vote. Over the next 2 weeks, we are looking to continue previous efforts to connect with our student senators, as well as continue to discuss pressing matters students find and face in the UCDSB. Our next report to board will be March 9, 2022. We will gladly answer any questions at this moment.
Thank you very much, student trustees. Trustees, do you have any questions that you would like to pose?
Through you, Chair, I have a question or a comment.
Yes, go ahead, Trustee Parisian.
I just wanted to comment probably through myself and Trustee Cram on the fantastic work that both of our 2 student trustees did this past week when reviewing the applications, when bringing forth the bylaws. I have to commend them for the work they have done. It is top notch. I think some of us trustees are an envy of the work that they presented to us, and actually are learning from them sometimes too. I think this is a great partnership that we are able to learn from them and they learn from us. So as a trustee that works with our student trustees, it is a true pleasure to have worked this year with both of you. And I'm still looking forward to the rest of the year that we get to work together. So thank you very much for the work you've been doing and that you've done, especially this week.
Thank you very much, Trustee Parisian, and also for all your guidance, both you and Trustee Graham.
Thank you, it means a lot. And thank you both for your guidance, especially.
Are there any further questions? Hearing none, student trustees, I wish you the best of luck at your Student Senate meeting on Friday. So have a good meeting. So trustees, we are now going to move to, if I have this right, to the report of the February 1, 2022 meeting of the Special Advisory Committee, and I will turn this over to Superintendent Perry.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the UCDSB Special Education Advisory Committee met for its monthly meeting on February 1st, 2022. The meeting occurred shortly after students had returned to in-person learning, and the staff presentation focused on the top 10 recommended classroom practices to engage all learners. Intensive student support workers, Lori Holiday and Jamie Belanger, shared with SEAC strategies that are necessary for some and good for all, including the establishment of classroom expectations, establishing positive reinforcements for the classroom, the use of visual schedules for all students, routines and transitions, an effective classroom environment, building relationships, and mindfulness. These strategies were shared as well with all of the school-based teams within our schools prior to the return of students to in-person learning, following that school closure period after the holidays. In the superintendent report, I shared with SEAC that 30 members of the system-level special education and wellness teams participated in training related to fetal alcohol syndrome. And also, under the leadership of Principal Karen Bryan, members of the Special Education Department, along with an external partner agency, reviewed some of our non-technical SIA equipment that's being stored at the Frankville Education Center. The items were reviewed to determine if they had reached their end of life, or if they could be recirculated and cataloged to be redistributed into schools. And so we were able to do a cull of equipment that is no longer safe to be used in our schools, and are following processes for the appropriate disposal of that equipment, and have also let schools know that we have equipment that it is in good shape and ready to be distributed into schools for schools that would require that equipment. I also was able to report to SEAC that we have interviewed for 2 psychometrist positions to support the work of our psychological associates in the testing of students. We are in the process of hiring 2 psychometrists. We have 2 who have accepted the position. We do still have a vacancy for a psychological associate, and this continues to be a challenge for us because of the province-wide shortage of qualified candidates for the position of psychological associate. So we continue to remain hopeful. As Dr. Curry moved from the position of psych associate into the position of chief psychologist, it's left an opening within that area in the department. The February 1st meeting was the first official SEAC meeting for Principal Julie Simons in her role as Principal of Special Education, and so the group welcomed Julie into her new role. And our next SEAC meeting will be Tuesday, March 1st at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you, Superintendent Perry. Trustees, do you have any questions?
Question here, Trustee Schooler.
Go ahead, Trustee Schooler.
Thank you very much for that report. I was most interested in what you had to say about the sharing of best practices. And I've certainly been in classrooms where things that you are referring to are being implemented, and was encouraged to see how some of these strategies are being embraced by staff and certainly are benefiting students. So my question is this: these best practices are ones that we as trustees, as we go into classrooms in the board, can expect to see not only in primary classes, I'm assuming, but all the way up to grade 12. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that is correct.
Super. Okay, well, I'll be looking for those. Thanks very much for sharing that.
Further questions?
I have one, Chair.
Go ahead, Trustee Cramp.
Superintendent Perry, recently there was a PPM 81 released from the ministry. Do we have any comment or feedback that we've had from parents as to the state of special education, or will we get that in a further report later on?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that PPM is being revised at this present time. So PPM 81 refers to the provision of healthcare services within the school setting and the collaboration between school boards and different partner agencies within the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Community and Social Services. And I'm actually bringing some information about the revisions that are being proposed to SEAC on the next meeting. At the next meeting, that will be the staff presentation that is being brought forward. I was involved in an initial consultation with the ministry very recently, and therefore was able to retrieve some information to be able to share with SEAC and discuss with SEAC in our next upcoming meeting.
Thank you, Superintendent Perry. Are there any further questions?
John McCray, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Trustee McCray.
Thank you. I'm wondering, with the increase in personnel in the psychology department, will there be any one-on-one clinical occasions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the psychological associates are not engaging in clinical therapy. The psychological associates will be engaged in doing testing, psychological educational testing for our students. So the therapeutic clinical intervention that might be seen with perhaps mental health interventions, that is a tier 3 intervention that is beyond the scope of the work of our psychological assistants.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Hearing none, Superintendent Perry, thank you for this enlightening report. We will now move to 10:05, which is the 2022-23 Upper Canada District School Board draft school year calendar. And before this presentation begins, I have a motion, and I'm looking for a seconder and a mover. Moved by whomever, seconded by whomever, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve the modified 2022-23 school year calendar for submission to the Ministry of Education by March 1st, 2022 for final approval. Is there a mover for that, please?
I can move it, John.
Trustee Parisian, seconder?
I would second it, Chair.
Trustee Cram, thank you. Superintendent McNair, would you like to proceed with your presentation?
Through you, Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity tonight to share with our Board of Trustees the proposed school year calendar for the 2022-2023 school year. And thank you to Derek in advance for advancing the slides for me. So on this slide, so tonight in this presentation, I'll provide an overview of some of the guidance shared from the Ministry of Education, some of the key considerations for us to keep in mind when we're drafting a calendar, our consultation process, and then some feedback we received through the process. So on this slide, I specifically reference the Ministry of Education guidance. So the ministry shares with us that we must include 194 instructional days in the school year calendar, 97 days in each semester. We must have 3 professional development days that are directed by the ministry, and that leaves us with 4 professional development days that are at our discretion as a board. The ministry defines that the school year must start no earlier than September 1st and end no later than June 30th. They also share with us the dates for Christmas holidays and March break. They remind us to keep in guidance the collective agreements and any considerations that are identified through professional development requirements outlined in our variety of collective agreements. And they also talk to us about what is permitted if you accept a calendar in its regular form or if you are modifying the calendar in any way. And so the calendar that we are bringing forward tonight is a modified calendar because we are looking at a difference of the Christmas break than was originally outlined. And the other change that I wanted to share is in previous years, the calendar would be due to the ministry by May 1st, but the Ministry of Education made an adjustment to Ontario Regulation 304, and that adjustment included changing the date of submission of the calendar to March 1st. So that's why I'm here a bit earlier this year than you may recall from previous years of when someone would bring the calendar to board. The next slide, please. So the key considerations that we always keep in mind when we are looking at developing a calendar is we look at the potential childcare needs of parents when we're identifying the professional development days. We work in collaboration with Catholic District School Board of Eastern Ontario to ensure the calendar is aligned so that we don't incur any additional transportation costs through our board. And we ensure a thorough consultation process with various stakeholders, including the Parent Involvement Committee, the Special Education Advisory Committee, our various employee groups, and we ensure there's an opportunity for people to provide feedback to us. And so I did set up a consultation process similar to other years. And I met separately with many of these groups that are identified here on the screen to talk to them about the proposed calendar. The next slide, please. The next slide talks a little bit about the public consultation process. So this year's public consultation process occurred from January 10th to January 31st, and feedback was collected from members of the public, students, and employees using an online and anonymous feedback form. So it's important to know that we created this form last year and it was very successful for us. So we initiated a similar form this year. And I worked very closely with our communications department to ensure that the public consultation process was communicated clearly when it was open and what it entailed. We ensured that it was shared through a variety of methods. We emailed our principals, we emailed our school council chairs, we emailed all of our staff, we sent out the information via My Family Room, and we posted information on school Facebook pages and our UCDSB websites. And I should say at that point too, we did receive from our large public consultation process, approximately 353 people that provided feedback to us. The next slide, Derek kind of takes us through, you will see on the left, and I just put it in a little bit of a pie chart for you as well, that we received 245 parents who responded, 96 staff members, 7 other community members, and 5 students. It's important to note here that, and you would have heard from my colleague Superintendent Loshaw, that our population is greater than 26,000 students. We also have approximately 4,000 employees, and we have over 18,000 people who are signed up for My Family Room. So just to give you a bit of an idea of how many people had the opportunity to provide feedback to us through our public consultation process. And then the next slide gives you some of the feedback topics and that we received. So we asked questions in these 3 areas, and so we received information that the majority of the people that responded agreed with our proposed start and end dates. Parents appreciated that students were starting after Labor Day for the upcoming school year. In terms of the winter break, the majority of responses were supportive of the placement of these holidays. Some feedback indicated a preference for more time before the Christmas holidays, but the majority preferred the time after the Christmas holidays. And then in terms of PA days, there were some concerns, and we certainly hear these from year to year about the number of PA days that occur midweek. But as you recall back on the Ministry of guidance I provided on one of the earlier slides, we have to ensure we have equal number of days in each semester. So sometimes some of the mid-PA day in February does occur midweek. And then it's also dependent on how many PA days potentially we put at the start of the school year. And again, not knowing the circumstances for certainly being optimistic, especially after hearing Dr. Paul and Dr. Paula tonight, that we are easing our way through the pandemic and hopefully seeing some more normalcy in the future. We are still having 2 PA days at the start of the school, so we can plan accordingly, and we can ensure that we are preparing for the arrival of our students following the Labor Day. And through you, Chair, in your package tonight, you would have also received a copy of the calendar that we have proposed, and we're looking for any questions or feedback. I welcome them right now through you, Chair. I'd be happy to answer anything that the trustees have if you wish. Through you, Chair, just making sure you can still hear me.
I can hear you, Marcia.
Okay. I didn't know if we lost connection.
No. I don't know about anybody else though, but I can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
I can hear you too, Marcia.
Okay.
Loud and clear.
We may have lost the chair. Could I ask the vice chair to jump in?
Marcia, we can always hear you. Marcia, we can always hear you.
Thanks, Josh.
Yes, so you have a motion in front of you which has been duly moved and seconded. that the Upper Canada District School Board approve the modified 2022-23 school year calendar for submission to the Ministry of Education by March 1, 2022 for final approval. Hearing no further questions or comments, trustees, I would ask you to cast your ballot, please. Lisa, I'm in favor.
Thank you, Chair. Chair McAllister, that motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move to
favor.
10:06, which is the report of the policy work group update, January 10, 2022 policy meeting. I'll turn this over to Trustee Vice Chair Cram and Chair of the Policy Committee.
Thank you, Chair. This report tonight will conclude the meeting that we had on January the 10th. We'll bring forward 4 motions tonight to upgrade our policies. We'll be bringing Policy 115, student transfers, Policy 204, employee performance appraisal, Policy 208, professional development, and Policy 210, secondment. Our next meeting is scheduled for March the 31st, where we will start the process of taking running another group of policies to update. So, Chair, I believe you do have some movers and seconders for these particular policies, and if you have it in front of you, we can proceed.
Thank you. Motion number 1. It's moved by Trustee Pattisian, seconded by Trustee Cram, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve Policy 115, student transfers as reviewed, February 23rd, 2022. Trustee Pattisian?
That'd be great. I'm just having a little bit of trouble with my Adobe. If Derek could just move to the next slide, which I believe has the policy so we can all see it. So exactly that. We reviewed the policy on January 10th at our working group, and we are here to present to the board. We have no suggested or proposed changes at this time, and the policy will remain as it is written.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, please cast your ballot online. I'm in favor, Lisa.
Thank you, Chair. Chair McAllister, that motion carries.
Thank you. Motion number 2. It's moved by Trustee McDonald, seconded by Trustee Pattisian, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve Policy 204, employee performance appraisals, as reviewed February 23rd, 2022. Trustee McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No changes or revisions to this policy at this time.
Any questions, comments? Hearing none, trustees, please cast your ballots. I'm in favor, Lisa.
Thank you, Chair.
Trustee Swan in favor.
Thank you, Trustee Swan. Mr. Chair, that motion carries.
Thank you. Motion number 3 is moved by Trustee Pattisian, seconded by Trustee McDonald, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve Policy 208, professional development, as reviewed February 23rd, 2022. Trustee Pattisian?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. We did review this policy, and I wanted to highlight that this is a very important policy to us. It's regarding professional development in staff, and currently we are going to leave the policy as is written on the screen and no changes or recommendations at this time.
Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, John McRae.
Go ahead, Trustee McRae.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have trouble supporting this. It's the idea that it's be mandated. Could Derek go back to that previous screen and call up? Yeah. The attendance at such sessions may be mandated in some cases when linked to performance appraisal requirements. The linking it to performance appraisal requirements, I find a little troubling. Earlier in the first paragraph, it mentions in support of systems, school, and department success plans. I would pretty much put school at the top of the list, and the other two you could leave off. But it comes back to that being mandated. I can't support it. I don't like the wording. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, trustees, please cast your ballot. I'm in favor, Lisa.
Thank you, Chair.
In favor, Trustee Swan.
Thank you, Trustee Swan. Chair McAllister, that motion carries.
Thank you. Motion number 4, moved by Trustee McDonald, seconded by Trustee Cram, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 210 as secondment as reviewed February 23rd, 2022. Trustee McDonald?
Same as this one, the previous policies, Mr. Chair. No changes or revisions at this time.
Any further questions, comments, trustees? Hearing none, please cast your ballots. I'm in favor, Lisa.
Thank you.
In favor.
Thank you, Trustee Swan. Chair McAllister, that motion carries.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Trustee Cram and Trustee Parisier and Trustee McDonald for your work on these important policy motions. So thank you. We're going to move to 11:01 and we're going to move into private session, Committee of the Whole. 2 motions with regard to that. The first one is moved by Trustee Swan, seconded by Trustee McCray, that the Upper Canada District School Board move into Committee of the Whole February 23rd, 2022. If there's no discussion, please cast your ballots. I'm in favor.
Thank you.
Orange, pink, or
In
green?
favor.
Chair McAllister, that motion carries.
Thank you.
Can you open it okay?
Motion number 2.
Yeah.
It's moved by Trustee Barry, seconded by Trustee Schooler, that Committee of the Whole move into private session February 23rd, 2022. Please cast your ballots online.
Chair, just a matter of procedure. I believe Trustee Barry's not on the line, so you'll need somebody else to move it.
Thank you. I had forgotten. I'm looking for a mover, please.
McDonald.
Trustee McDonald, seconded by Trustee Schooler. Please cast your ballots online.
Chair McAllister, that motion carries.
Thank you, and I believe I turn this over to the private session to Vice Chair Cram, correct?
Yes, and I would just ask that we wait for Derek to end the live stream portion of the public meeting.